Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. We are in the home stretch here on this, what is today, Tuesday? Welcome back. We've got Jonesboro Alderman Bobby Long is with us. Bobby, how are you?
Hello, Paul. Good to see you this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to have you with us. So, first of all, you've got some big, let's start with a great idea that you have had. For those of you who are listening, Jonesboro's got a special election for a sales tax. And it's coming up September the 10th. Sales tax increase. There's people for it. There's people against it. Bobby's against it. And you've got an idea. So tell us what that idea is.
I do. Many of you know that when all this started, the first thing that I advocated for was to slow down. Second was the splitting of that 1% sales tax, because half of it was to go to fire, half of it goes to $110 million worth of stuff that I don't think that eventually we will be able to afford. The tax also sunsets in 12 years. The city of Jonesboro has had a history with sunset taxes. Back in 2010, the police and fire, public safety, was voted in a 0.5% sales tax. Well, it was only supposed to go for 4 years. So after 4 years, the tax December 31 of 2014, that tax expired. Okay. Now here we are less than 5 years later needing some more. So I didn't really like that issue. I didn't like tying public safety with amenities. That was one of the main things. I thought that people needed an opportunity to vote one or the other, both or neither.
Right.
But of course, with the Finance Committee, I asked for a vote, to split the ordinance. That did not happen. Then when it got to full council, I realized very quickly that the votes for that to happen were not there.
Yeah.
They weren't there.
Yeah, there wasn't even an attempt,
No.
a reason to even make a motion, because it wouldn't have gone anywhere.
Well, I don't know that I would have even gotten a second. Because, you had some that said, that posed the question, why would we even split the tax? And then another posed the statement that if we change it, then it no longer becomes the people's ordinance, but it becomes the city's ordinance. So I just didn't even do it. So
let me kind of set this up. So right now, because it's a full cent, 0.5 cent for police and fire, 0.5 cent for these amenities or quality of life, there are some people who are against the amenities, but they are for police and fire, and
Yes.
they're thinking of voting. They're thinking of voting for this thing, because they do want to support police and fire. So for people in that position, what do you say, Bobby?
Yes, and that has been the reoccurring theme from a multitude of people that I've talked to. And as I listened to the people, I realized, though, that there were a lot of other issues that this ordinance had that were not addressed. So what I did was I began to work on an ordinance of my own. And that's what I'm going to propose in a press release today, and you're the first one to hear about it.
Okay.
So this is the first time that I brought this out. My ordinance, though, if the current 1% sales tax fails September 10th, then I will propose my ordinance. It gives a people the true option. Matter of fact, it is a single issue ordinance, which means it is strictly for fire and police, nothing else, strictly for fire and police. The continuation of the tax is provisional. This is, I think, key, because it provides more protection for the funding of the fire and police than they've ever had. What do I mean by that? Well, I propose 1/4 cent instead of a whole cent. That means right now the city gets 1% taxes. Now that rate will go to 1.25. It will take our total tax from 8.5 to 8.75 instead of from 8.5 to 9.5. I think a lot of people had issue with that as well.
Right.
So this tax does not have a sunset. It's a permanent tax as long as one provision remains constant. And here's the provision. Upon the fire and police budgets being the same or increasing over the prevailing budget years, if their budgets are reduced, the tax goes away beginning January of the following budget year. So what does that mean? That means that, yes, the fire and police will get the 1/4%, but it also means that their current budgets will remain the same and not be reduced. So that was a, whether or not it's true or not, that was a concern for many people, that now that they've got this additional revenue stream, the fire and police budgets on the general budget side would go down.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what happened. That's what's happened in the past.
Yeah, and that was the concern that this addresses, because what happens now is if the budget remains the same or increases, the tax still remains. But the minute the city adopts a budget in which the fire and police's current budget is reduced or does not stay the same, that tax will go away.
So if they're claiming that fire and police are a priority, we're making sure that this ordinance will make sure that that we hold them to that claim. That if it's a priority, make it a priority all the time, not just when you want to pass a tax.
Right. And it just makes sense. You start thinking, well, can't we trust this person or that person to do that? And thinking, there's nothing wrong with a contract. What a contract does and what this provision does is it's not saying that people would do anything erroneously bad. What it's saying is it just sets forth guidelines to where we can trust one another, to where we can go about it and we can maintain a level of trust. And I think that this is what this ordinance does. It's a permanent tax, but it's a 0.25%. It's not 1%. It's permanent. It doesn't sunset. We've already been through the sunset things. I think sunset taxes are good when you have a specific project that has a specific amount of money that you raise for a specific set of time that the people want. This is not this. We've already been down that road 4 years, less than 5 years ago. And now here we are back needing more money again. It also gives some security to the fire and police, knowing that there's not a cliff 10 years, 12 years down the road that they're going to have to fight again in order to keep money. Of course, it's lower than the 0.5% that they would get, but there's a probability that it will be a long-term type of deal, and you can set, you can start looking long-term instead of short-term.
And sales tax revenues increase. That's what happens because more people move to your community, more people do commerce.
Right. I also think that as Jonesboro grows into its skin, our sales tax will continue to increase.
Yeah.
When we annexed all that land, we sort of spread ourselves really thin. But now as Jonesboro starts to grow into its own skin, I think that sales tax revenue will increase, which will give more money to the fire and police without the worry of the general budget side going down.
Mm-hmm. If you're just joining us, folks, we're talking with Jonesboro City Councilman Alderman Bobby Long. He has just proposed a 0.25% sales tax specifically for police and fire if on September 10th the full 1 cent is voted down, which has a 0.5 cent for police and fire, another 0.5 cent for quality of life and that sort of thing. So I definitely think this is a great idea, Bobby. I mean, it's it's definitely going to give people an alternative who want the police and fire to get more money because of a crime problem or a perceived crime problem. Right? I mean, there's a lot of people who are concerned about that right now.
There is, and I think that's a true concern. I also want people to understand, it's ever since I've got into city council and things like that, one of the main things is I don't want to sneak up on anybody, and I don't want to, make something that I don't want to create a disillusion between perception and reality. So let me tell you this. I will propose this ordinance, but this ordinance will have to come before Finance Committee. Yeah. It will also have to come before the full City Council. So if this fails, the first thing I will do is propose this to the Finance Committee. Now, I don't see where they would even bat an eye at passing this on through, getting it before the full City Council, and then getting it on to the ballot, which is something else that an issue that this addresses. I will not have another ordinance that will call for another special election. I want there to be time for there to be debate. I want there to be time for people to look at this and understand it and get a good grasp on it before they go to the polls. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this would not be accompanied by a special election ordinance. This would be just an ordinance that will have plenty of time for the public to look at it, understand it, ask questions about it, and then go to the polls educated. Yeah. And vote.
You think you would want to do it in the general next year or the primary? The primaries something too that you could consider.
It would. I think you get more votes though in the general.
No doubt.
I do.
Yeah.
And for me to advocate for, in essence, the true voice of the people to be heard, I think it's important that our first option would be for it to be in the general election where there is more people voting.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I've got here, if you kind of look over the history, this is kind of interesting. Here's an article back in 2015 in the Jonesboro Sun. Proposed sales tax hike raises lots of questions. And I guess who is it? Chris Wessel, the editor. Maybe the mayor is hoping that as few voters as possible, mostly those in favor, will show up at the polls on November 10th to give him $16 million plus more to spend each year. So there was a lot of skepticism back in 2015.
Yeah, there was. If you were just to look at, go back into the archives of the Jonesboro Sun, you'll see that in 2000, a permanent tax was approved by the voters. However, this 1% permanent tax, half of it went to capital improvements, half of it went to the general fund. In 2010, a public safety half-cent tax was initiated. It was set to expire December 31, 2014. That raised our tax to 9%. In August of 2014, a special election was held, rolling that 0.5% for capital improvements into the general fund. So now the general fund not only had a 0.5%, but it had the other that was strictly for capital improvements rolled into it. This was a few months before the police and fire tax was set to expire. In December of 2014, that public safety half-cent tax expired, and there was absolutely no effort to re-up it or to make it continue on. What's interesting is back in 2010, when that public safety tax was initiated, it was sold as a way to prevent fire and police layoffs. So the people, of course, they immediately, voted for it. But then what had people scratching their heads was that after this half-cent went away, the half-cent from capital improvements went into the general budget. At that point, I believe even the Jonesboro Sun said something to the effect that Jonesboro has more money than it can spend.
Yeah.
I think that may have been in 2013.
Yeah, we have, here's just a few articles, and I'll let you take it away, Bobby.
Yeah.
Let's see, 2014 council committee to discuss tax by the special election. Let's see.
I think it was in maybe 2013.
And then we got 2014 Nick's special election on sales tax measure. That's another one from Chris Wessel when he was against this.
Yeah, December 19th, 2013 article says, apparently Jonesboro is so flush with cash it can dole out 8.9% raises to the mayor, 2% across the board.
Yeah.
Apparently there's no need for the half-cent public safety tax because city already has so much money it can simply pay for all the raises and perks itself. However, of course you can see that in 2015, when a 0.5% was set to expire, and then 2015, there was a proposal for another 1% sales tax that people are sort of scratching their heads. What is this all about? Of course, that tax was voted down and our tax rate stayed at 8.5. But irregardless of that, here we stand today. Our fire departments need 2 new stations. Our police, even though the spending that they said that they would use from this money, the police would have already needed to buy anyway. Their radios, I believe, are outdated and need to be updated. So this is money that the city was going to need to spend anyway. So irregardless of that, there are needs for our public safety, our police and firemen. And I've been a strong advocate for them ever since I've been on the council. And this is just another way that not only we give them money, but we protect what they're already getting. Yeah. And I think that's imperative.
I think that's the biggest, the best idea in the whole thing, actually.
I do. Yeah. And, it's crazy. And I know that you're a man of faith and I'm a man of faith. And, when this was happening before the city council, I don't really know why I didn't make a motion to split this ordinance, but I sat there and I just did not. But then as I look back on retrospect, I can see that something better could have been proposed, because had this been split right then, it would have been 12 years. It would have been 0.5%. They would have had the cliff. There would have, there's a lot of things that this ordinance addresses and corrects, and I think is more apt to what the people want than what it would have been had it just been split. At least here we have 0.25%, but it's set for a long time. It has protections for the fire and police that they have never had before, in not only increasing their money with a specialized tax, but it protects their current budget levels as well, so they can't be reduced. And if they are reduced, the tax goes away. So I don't think there is a councilman or anybody that would look at a budget, reduce the fire and police budget, knowing that other 0.25% is going to go away.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah. I mean, if there's any police officers, or firemen listening to the show, which I know there are right now, and this is a good idea. This is a better idea for you guys, and in terms of protecting, your funding source. Now, there's still going to be others that are going to say,
yes,
we want the pools and the swimming pools and everything else, and so we still think that the current proposal is the best. But for those who really want to support police and fire, but not all this other stuff, if it is defeated, you're going to try to get this through the city council.
You better believe it. I will try with everything I have. Now, I can't guarantee anything, but I can guarantee you that I will propose this ordinance that I think addresses a lot of the concerns that people have right now. And the truth of the matter is, I also understand that there will be those, and there will be many of my friends, who will vote no for any tax at all.
Yeah.
And I totally,
That's true.
and I totally understand that. And I understand where they're coming from. And I think that is totally great. That's awesome. However, one of the things that I want this to do is provide an option. And that was one thing I don't think the people had. It was an all or nothing type of deal. And I just don't think that was right. I don't think that was the way to go. And I have the ability to propose something that would remedy that. And,
that's what you're doing.
That's what I'm doing.
Well, I appreciate your thoughtfulness, and because that's really, I think, what this is. It shows that you are a thinker and you're trying to do the right thing, Bobby. And I know everybody's trying to do the right thing here.
They are.
I appreciate your ideas. Really
Well,
do.
thank you. And like I said before, when we can come in and debate things in the arena of ideas, we put forth our ideas. Team Jonesboro is putting forth theirs.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that that they think this is right. I don't think that they're trying to, to do something that they think would damage Jonesboro.
Correct.
And I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
At the same time, I may have a difference of opinion. My opinion is just as valid as theirs. I'm not going to go out and call them names and do anything like that, although I have been called names recently, and that's okay because I've got a tough skin. However, that is not going to impede me from doing what I think is right. And what I think is right now is to give people the knowledge that there will be an option if there's anything I can do with it.
Yeah. All right.
Do about it.
Alderman Bobby Long, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. It's always great to have you on, and appreciate you spending time with us this morning.